Okay. So, so good news about the bridge last night. Thank you, Ray, for sending out the copies of all the materials already to DOT. And Ray, could you talk about what this means for the issuing of the bids and our timetable there?
Uh, we have to be getting close to the end of the DOT's punch list there. Have I said that before? The last few back and forth with Julie and Paul Prosciutti, our Urban Anthony project manager, have been about, changing numbers on the drawings and insignificant numbers. So it's down to the almost to the typo stage. So this set of drawings and the plans will be going out in perfect order. The contractors, are only going to be given 4 weeks to bid on it. But still, I don't have a good date for when that go ahead from DOT will be.
Good.
It should easily be within the month. I can't imagine what more they need. A lot of stuff has already been reviewed in Albany at the draft stage. So the final sign off should be pretty quick.
So just one caveat to that, Ray. I was disappointed that Paul hadn't resolved this issue about this native seed mix before this coming out literally at the 11th hour of the 11th hour. That would have derailed the project. So this might be news to a couple of you, but we had agreed like a year or so before that we were going to create more of a native meadow, a pollinator mix, which by the way, New York State advocates for, DOT advocates for, but they don't make it easy. And so we created this custom mix. Well, Paul should have made sure that that conformed with what DOT was going to be willing to sign off on, any of the intervening months. But this came back from Julie, that this was going to cause a delay because it didn't conform with the standard seating specifications. And so we kind of had to do this last minute change because we didn't want to add potentially months or who knows what, or any additional reasons at all for DOT to drag their feet on this anymore. So the solution that we came up with was to go with their standard specification, which included the use of a cereal grain, which we were already going to include as a cover crop. And then we could still augment that with the seed mix that we wanted to use to begin with. Now, these are just going to be in the contract documents, not in the DOT documents. The DOT documents, it's going to say whatever business as usual. The downside to it is that the seeding rate that we need to use to meet that need is like 20 times more than we otherwise would have chosen. So it means that our pollinator mix is not going to probably do as well long term because of this. So those are the trade-offs that we have to do, and maybe down the road we buy some more seed and we just keep adding some by hand until it ends up being what it is that we want. But that was kind of being put in a no good choice situation, and I was, like I said, kind of annoyed with Paul that he hadn't caught this before, and we had to scramble at the last minute.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, thanks for working through the compromise on those concerns. At this point, we have to pick our battles.
Yep. Alice, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you also for responding quickly and coming up with that compromise. Good. Um, okay, anything more on where we are with that process? Okay, let's go on to the NICEAG section washout and
Well, Alice, before we do, Dan, you can decide how you want to share this, but last night Jason raised the question of could we get DPW to do some of the work on the 13 bridge to save us some money? And you responded that, you know, we kind of, and then Spring also asked a question on this. So just to, that everybody remembers, DPW is going to do the trail work for the Monkey Run to 13 section and some of the trail work from there to Hallwoods Road. And we put that into the project on the front end because if we're going to use force account to do that work, we had to specify that in the agreement with DOT. So we are planning to utilize DPW to do some of the work, but all the abutments and the bridge and all the utilities, all the rest of that, as you indicated in the meeting, is going to be contractual. So just if it comes up again, or you want to clarify with Spring or Jason that we were already trying to minimize costs and use DPW where it made sense.
Yeah, I thought that was sort of a general statement they made, not knowing the details that you just articulated and that we've all talked about. So, you know, kind of like we're recording. I better not say that, but I think they just wanted to show their concern and ways to save money, because none of us like the idea of, you know, taking on, you know, additional financial burdens with this trail. But as I said, you know, and I think the board agrees, you know, if we have to pay a quarter of the overall cost, it's still a good deal. And that needs to be our outlook. But we can continue to look for other funding sources. As long as we're talking about this, if you don't mind, I did think that, you know, we could pursue some state member item money. I've been holding back on this because we've already tapped that source. And typically when, you know, a legislator gets money, they don't expect you to come back. It's not it's not recommended, you know, and so I wouldn't have thought to go back to Gillibrand, for instance. That would make them wonder why they gave us money in the first place. But we have never asked Anna or Leah for money. And so I thought, you know, we could reach out to them, which I did. Unfortunately, you know, they've already put in their one house bills. So in the legislature, each entity, the governor and the Senate and the Assembly, all introduce their budget bills, and then they go on to negotiate those. And those were introduced last week. And apparently the member item deadline was February 12th. And I was texting Anna yesterday about this, and she said, go ahead and put in a submission, but it's probably too late. But that we should have a submission on file with them.
Could I know this, we're talking about the bridge and helping to offset that increased cost of the bridge project, you know, but if an ask for bridge funding doesn't, you know, doesn't result in anything positive, or it's too late or whatever, could we instead ask for, you know, funding towards that next stretch, you know, if we're potentially in negotiations with that one landowner?
Well, it's more like the calendar wouldn't favor that anymore than the bridge. I think Anna and Leah love this project. They've shown up to our events. We remember that. And I think they wouldn't mind having some skin in the game. That was
I think
my
it'd be great. So Dan, when we approached Barbara Lifton, we were successful in getting multimodal funds. is multimodal funds kind of in this member initiative bucket, or are those separate? Is multimodal a potential way that we could go down a different path and get funds? Because remember, the multimodal grant that we got had to pertain to roads.
Yeah.
And so it only could be used for the part of the project that was quote unquote the bridge. Well, that's the most expensive part. That's the part that has escalated significantly. So, we got something like 365,000 or something in the multimodal funds. So it's not an insignificant pot of money that we could potentially, and the paperwork for it was super easy.
Love that.
So is member initiatives different than multimodal, or is multimodal among the member initiatives?
So the Barbara Lifton money was added to the budget, if I remember this right,
Yes.
in a particular year. Maybe we put in a member item and she put it in as a multimodal. I don't
know the mechanics of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like we just said, hey, we needed money for the bridge, and her staff identified this as a means to the end. And that we were, and then there was a little bit of back and forth to make sure it was, what was eligible, and you can't use it as match. You can't use it as, you can't use it except for the highway crossing. But right now we don't need match. We just need the money. And the more money part is for the crossing the Route 13.
Well, she's got a button on her website that says in district funding request. I bet we could fill this out fairly quickly. And then remind them that we got multimodal. And do you remember what year that was?
Oh my gosh. That was like the first money that we got, Dan. So maybe like 2019.
March 9th of 2020. I'm just pulling up the documents.
Mm-hmm.
You're good, Ray.
Anniversary of COVID.
Now, there was two, right? We got some for highway surfacing, and then that money helped to offset costs that were in the DPW budget that went into this.
Right.
So in aggregate, it was really 500,000, and we split it.
345 dedicated to this bridge project.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, my guess is if we initiated a process that looks a lot like this, and then they found the account to put it in, because they're very general. She just says capital funding request must be at least 125,000. Capital grant funding provides reimbursement for approved money spent. Isn't that what we've got right
Yes.
now?
Yeah, the bond is going to be how you spend it.
Yeah.
Because we haven't asked for reimbursement on the money that we've already received yet. So it's not a closed out. The initial multimodal grant is not closed out yet. We're just asking really a supplement for the same purpose through multimodal again.
Right. So I think we should get one of these in as soon as possible with her, and then follow up. Some of the questions, Todd, you might be in the best place to answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to help, Dan. Just shoot me whatever things that you want, whatever I can contribute to, whatever format.
Okay. All right, we'll take care of this.
Good idea. Yay.
Anything that offsets some of this additional 900,000, I think would be really great.
So you think, Dan, are you talking about this going through Anna's office or through Leah's office, or or do the exact same thing for both?
Both. That's
Yeah.
That's the direction I got from both offices. Well, Anna gave me it directly. With Leah, it was her staff.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking that, I was saying before that I think Leah might be a good, well, let's approach both of them, but Leah's office doesn't have any skin in the game, whereas, Anna's predecessor did get us that first one. So we have one from Assembly, but not from Senate. It would be nice to have one from Senate as well as Assembly.
Yeah.
It shook
No,
that.
They both have reasons.
Okay, they both have.
So along those same lines, in the prior meeting, Alice, you have said that you were gonna reach out to Greg Maisie about the county.
Yeah, about county money. That hasn't happened. So I'm sorry. But
You're given a pass. You had a well-deserved vacation and you're not been well recently, but just so everybody remembers that that was the other thing we're going to pursue, a potential to see if there was interest in amending the capital grant that we got from the county to increase some of the funding through that mechanism.
yeah, good. I'll get that on my to-do list as soon as I recover. So let's go to the washout, shall we?
Okay. Yeah, quite a few updates here. Ray, thanks for sending the right-of-way document. I was gonna try to get some measurements and benchmarks to know exactly where the different widths were, and I'll still plan to do that. I just didn't get to do it here before the meeting. But there's some good news on this, which is it appears that the part of the NYSEG section has a wider than is standard right-of-way at 90 feet instead of 66. And it seems that it's right in and around where the washout is, but I plan to confirm that. And Charlie's class has been making a lot of progress on different parts of this. It's kind of this interesting amoeba where if you push on one side of it, it kind of bulges out and changes things over on one other side, and then that, you know, doesn't necessarily work, and then you adjust it over here, and then it kind of creates another set of challenges elsewhere. And we kept kind of finding ourselves in that, and this is still kind of at the conceptual level, trying to balance minimizing trucking costs and equipment costs, staying inside the 66-foot easement and using material that we move within that, not filling wetlands, etc. Minimizing the length of the bridge spans because it's expensive the longer it is. Wanting it to be a bit closer to the water because it's such a great natural feature of interest. And, you know, overall trying to constrain costs and building something that we think NYSEG is going to be supportive of. And like a lot of things, you're not going to be able to meet every single criteria that you put forward. And it seems like the easiest solution to meeting the majority of those needs is to change how we would approach it being ADA compliant. And so for reference, our ramps for the Route 13 bridge, because it's a federal project, have to be ADA compliant, and because of the length of them, they needed to be 1 to 20. And that's kind of the standard. And when you look at the ADA standards, it does have some different kinds of criteria, whether or not it's federally funded or not. But like if it's urban, suburban, the standard is higher. if it's rural, quote, natural area, it allows it to be ADA compliant kind of with a lower standard. And that would be at a 1 to 12 slope instead of a 1 to 20. And so I thought that this would be a good topic for getting feedback from the full task force on Monday to help inform our decision. One of the nice things is if you do a 1 to 12, it means that the length that is at that grade is less overall in length. And that means that there's a lot less material that we have to move in order to span the washout. It means significant cost savings for things like DPW and moving material around. So the other thing is, like, where does that material go? And does that create headaches for us either with NYSEG or with the DEC because of the wetlands? And so Charlie's been putting a lot of time into trying to understand the railroad ballast, what's underneath, and could we use the trail itself as where the fill gets put? So in theory, you could do that, but if that means that it's just a mushy mess, it means that then Rick has to come in with a bunch of subbase, and he's putting all kinds of, time and materials costs into essentially building the trail in the future. So anyway, Charlie and I are going to be meeting with Rick next week to get feedback on all of these things. Not in these non-urban areas. Plus, there's us saying that it's ADA compliant kind of in principle versus like technically ADA compliant. Because we're not using state or federal money, we don't technically need to be compliant for the ADA, at least from a funding standpoint. I don't know if the town has a policy that everything has to be ADA compliant, but generally there's this carve out for trails and natural areas, which this is. So anyway, getting back to, so we're going to meet with Rick. The thought is, Charlie has dug a bunch of test pits out there. We don't have traditional railroad ballast. The railroad was built in the 1870s. They essentially, I think, found sand and gravel deposits in, wherever it was convenient. And here they built this, it's like 18 feet high of the railroad bed fill. And the thought is that it all needed to be the same kind of material, because otherwise it would fail over time. And so we dug down to kind of get a sense that it's this gravel sand, kind of within the top foot of the surface. And it's highly likely that the entire amount of material is the same kind of material. So in other words, if we excavate some of it and put it on the trail, it's not going to significantly change what is already the quote trail surface, or at least the subbase of the trail surface. So these are things that we want to confirm with Rick and make sure that the kinds of things that we're talking about are going to be okay with him. He mentioned that he wanted to, among the solutions that he had was like, I have culvert pipes. I can just put the culvert pipe there, move the material over the top, it's done. Well, there isn't that much that it involves the students to do that. And also for us to use potentially $10,000 worth of what Charlie has, I see a note from Julie, so that's good. Julie Baldwin, you guys probably got that too, so just wanted to read that quick. So even though we could kind of do it quick and dirty, is being suggested, I'm not sure that that accomplishes some of the things that we wanted to do with both some of the funds that we have available through Charlie and then the student design and engagement component. So anyway, there's a bunch of those issues, and then the last one, and then we can kind of do Q&A if you want, is New York State changed some of their wetlands regulations recently, and we're now going to do this notification with them. And so depending on that, they are likely to claim that they have jurisdictional responsibility for this, which is understandable. And what we intend to do is to say all the work we're going to be doing is in compliance with the Corps of Engineers nationwide permit number 14, which supports, essentially pre-approves you for a permit as long as you follow what's in that standard. And so that's what we're wanting to convey to DEC and hopefully get them to sign off on that, the design and the way that we plan to approach the, have it conform with the nationwide permit.
Okay, any questions about that? We're gonna get a representative from Charlie's class, Max Troutman, attending our meet, Max Edward, attending our meeting on Monday night, and I'm assuming he'll sort of convey what the class is, where the class is at with some of those questions, Todd.
I don't know. One thing I suggested was that we would get an update wherever they are on Monday, that they would share updated designs on their approach. And that should now include this 1 to 12 slope, and we can then have some better understanding about what that is and if people are comfortable with that.
Okay, sounds good. Chris.
Todd, was there any determination on the depth or angle of the fiber?
Yes, the folks were very responsive that the town has as consultants. They went out on site and they delineated the length relative to the depth of the fiber for the entire stretch of that. And Charlie was present and his students, and they captured that information, and that should be in the design drawings. The 1 to 12 and the shortening the length of these ramps means that it's even less of a concern for where the fiber is relative to the construction.
Okay. Good question and good.
Yeah, that I didn't mention that, but that was one of the other constraints in this amoeba thing that we were working through.
Yeah.
Although when we were out on site, there doesn't seem to be a lot of concern with if the fiber conduit has to be lowered, that would not be a tremendous task. It would simply be trenching on the side and moving it over. And it didn't sound to the Syracuse Utilities folks that would be a big job. You know, Rick could do the trench and they could just simply come out and do the move.
Okay, that's good to know.
Right.
And as the students were out there talking, I asked them about what would be the footprint of the earthwork if it was a 1 to 20. And they said it was approximately 200 feet back on each side of the creek. So
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like that huge of a work area,
well,
400-foot stretch.
when I talked with, that was another thing when I was talking with Charlie about this, it actually was more than that.
Okay,
If they were gonna put it on the top of the trail and not on the embankment, it was gonna run over towards, past the NICEAG property line, on both sides, because we don't have 200 feet on the, Leonardo side. And we have, and they were projecting that it actually would be, it would exceed 200 feet with at least one of the scenarios that they ran, Ray, that would then be bringing them over onto the Swan property. And I told them, we don't have the other easement. And so we definitely don't want to be, it's one thing if we have people walking across the historic top of the rail bed without actually having done any construction on that section yet on the Glen Swan property, and making sure that we put the trail on his side of the right of way. But if we're doing it on the top of the embankment all the way back onto Glen's property, we'll definitely be on the property that we don't have the easement for. And I was like, we don't want to be designing to have Phil extend into that beyond the NICEAG piece. So reducing the angle or increasing the angle for the bridge solves a whole lot of problems for us.
Good to clarify. Thank you. Anything else, Ray? You met with the students out there on site.
yeah, it was, they were very engaged and interested in how this, the utility locate basically, and so they seemed jazzed to be working on this project. It was interesting that the depth of the conduit at the creek is 8 foot down. And then it tapers up, fairly quickly, but, most of the depths we were getting 12, 15 feet down.
So you're saying, sorry, at the creek, under the bottom of the creek, it's 8 feet below that?
8 feet,
Okay.
right.
That's good.
Yep. And they were, when they were trenching this in, they were staying offset from the center line. So that's another thing to keep in mind, that, it seems like a good 5 foot offset from center line of trail. I'm wondering at this point, what do we want to do for the NICEAG agreement as far as getting a new map to attach to that?
Oh, good.
Have
That's right.
Mike Regan do something related to the railroad map?
Yeah,
What the sketch is alluding to, the very poor sketch that's in our agreement now, I
right.
think could be interpreted as it's intending to be the railroad bed or the railroad property.
So one of the thoughts that Charlie suggested is, and at least right now, unless we utilized the Cornell funds, we don't have a pot of money for spending on the work that we're doing right now, because none of the grants are for this section. One of the thoughts that Charlie had was the least expensive level of surveying that we could do is actually have them identify the center line of the rail bed. And that would then allow us to know that we're well within 45 feet on either side of any level of disturbance where we're going off of the easement with NICEAG. So, I mean, the plan right now is that we're not going to be changing where the toe of the slope is for the embankment. And so we're fairly confident that we're going to stay within the right of way, but we don't know what NICEAG is going to say about exactly where our work is relative to the easement. We were thinking that it was 66 feet. So the fact that it's 90 means that it's really improbable Um, so, yeah, I mean, we've been having some back and forth with NICEAG. They asked us a bunch of questions, and then they asked us for an updated certificate of insurance and a few other things. But you know, the agreement that we have with them is that we're supposed to provide notifications, and you know, we will continue to do that. The technically, the one is us proposing our work. Well, we're not at that point yet, right? Until we actually have a design, then there isn't an actual way that we can communicate, here's what the work is. Ideally, the design shows where the center line is and where the easement is in relation to the design. And for that, we would need Mike to help us to do that. So we could do it just on paper, or he might need to go out and actually get some physical reference points to kind of put the two things together. So that one is still kind of a TBD about that, and we don't know at what level NICEAG is gonna, what level of information NICEAG is gonna ask for.
Okay. So I should just keep him on hold at this point and say once we have more of a clarity on the need, then we'll give him a scope of work and he can go out and either create a paper plat or put a couple of monuments in.
So, yeah, I mean, I could talk with Charlie and see if he's willing for some of their money to be used for this, because that's right now the only money that we have. I know we had some gift money that we received and we kind of earmarked for signage across the trail. I don't know if the gift money might be possible if we can't use Cornell money.
There's also a line item in my budget for $5,000 for this rail trail task force to support your work. So this might be a
Oh.
useful piece there.
I don't know that we were aware of that. Or if we were, we might have forgotten it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah. What, you got an estimate? It probably depends on whether it's a plat or monuments, but what is the,
Yeah, it seems like it's hard to get any survey less than $1,000 these days.
okay.
Yeah, but it should have, this should be pretty straightforward. It shouldn't be exorbitant. So,
Yeah, the southeast corner of the Glen Swan lot is a monument right in the middle on the center line. So, and Mike put that in just 5 years ago. So that should be easily recovered. And then if we just want a center line, it's a straight shot through the NICEAG property. So he could just simply get a distance bearing and put another monument at the Leonardo boundary. So it could be as simple as that, 2 monuments defining a center line on a straight bearing.
and then sending the updated plat with all the reference points to Charlie's class, and then they can incorporate it into their plan designs.
Mhm.
I mean, they would provide it that meets and bounds plat anyway, right?
The surveyor would provide? you said?
Right.
Yeah, he could, but it would just be a center line and 33 feet either side. Or he could go back to the railroad map and approximate where it's 41 on one side and 49 on the other.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is if he basically updates the railroad map and shows where the pins are that he would put on the center line on Swan and Leonardo, and then we're able to, the students then could take that set of meets and bounds and overlay it with their design, and we would have what we want.
Yeah.
So rather than putting it on hold, it sounds like you're saying, go ahead and ask for that from Mike sooner rather than later, so the students have it.
Well, and that we can communicate it to NICEAG.
Right. So Ray, can you
Okay.
get, you can
So I
get,
can put that on Mike's plate to do that, establish the two monuments on the center line, have the paper plat done, and then show the various widths. There are actually three different widths. One, in one spot, it's almost 100 feet wide, right at our washout. So he could just show that on his paper plat without putting monuments at those inflection points.
Ray, let me touch base with Charlie
Okay,
before we. I want to make sure that, like, having just that spot that you're talking about where the widths change is like, does that really matter if that's monumented in the land, or could we live with it with just the 2 points? So let me get back with you on this.
yeah, I would never propose putting monuments down at those inflection points. I think they should just be, put as a paper plat. Because it's down in the water and there's no way of keeping those monuments secure.
Right. Well, assuming that that's where that point is, and I don't have a good sense of how wide at its widest, how wide we are. I mean, I would assume that everything in the toe of the slope is in the right of way. Otherwise, they would have asked for more. So it seems like it's safe, but let me just double check with Charlie before we proceed.
Okay, sounds good. I'll await your word. But yeah, looking at this railroad map that I just sent out last night, it's 100 feet wide at the washout. So,
okay, good to
And
know.
you're saying that because that's where the 14-inch CI pipe that's 40
Yeah.
feet is?
yep.
Okay.
Anything more on the washout? Chris?
Just one question, Todd. The measurement of 200 feet back, is that from the top of the embankment where the washout begins, or is that from the center point of the stream bed? So, the washout's like this. Are we talking about 200 feet back from the washout point at the top of the surface of the rail bed? Or are you talking?
200 wasn't the number that I used. That was the number the students used. But
Right.
I could do this real quick here. Hold on a second.
Because I'm looking at the approximate location of this center point of the stream, and it looks like the Leonardo property is back about 245 or so feet from the stream,
Yeah.
and Swan is even much longer than that, like 540 feet or something like that.
And that 200 foot was just a very approximate. So whether it's 210 or 200
Yeah.
within the tolerance.
It's about 245 from the center of the washout to Leonardo.
What'd you say?
245.
245. Yeah, that was about what I got.
And we're about 560 to Swan.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's go to phase 3 planning and Ray, I'm assuming that we did get approval from the Township Transportation Council, and where are we at with initiating the study of the Pinckney to Johnson section?
I would guess that would be a resolution approved by the town board to expend funds. That's $10,000 that the town does have to come up with fronting the payment, and then we seek reimbursement through the ITCTC. So it should be fairly secure. The way Fernando talks about it is that work plan, they get that money April 1 at the start of their budget year. So he recommends just getting the the request in as soon as we can. But he felt pretty confident that the funding would be there, the reimbursement would be there.
Good. Didn't we already do that, Dan? I thought I thought the town board approved town spending pending the grant in February.
You're on mute. You're muted, Dan.
It's my first time on Zoom. I think Ray was talking about it earlier. I mean, he's talking about the ITTC grant,
Yep.
Right.
and we have to do that specifically for that grant, correct?
Yeah, we
Right.
just, I don't know that we've done the approval at the town board level to go ahead and expend that money pending reimbursement.
Yeah, and Alice, are you thinking we did for that particular grant? Because I don't.
Well, we passed a resolution in the task force.
Yeah.
Which then got forwarded by Dan to the town board, and I believe authorized the, we felt like it was so close to the approval that the town board could authorize the spending. But I'm not thinking straight, so if I'm wrong, let me know. I thought the town board passed.
Okay. Any idea when that was? Because sometimes these things are not remembered by me.
I think okay, well, let's check that because before we take it to the town board again, let's check to see if the task force's resolution came to the town board in a form that then got approved to authorize the spending before we have to do it again. You're looking
For that particular account. I just want to make sure that we specifically addressed the ITTC money.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
I know that the task force passed a resolution which went to the town board, and I thought that that resolution then resulted in the town board agreeing to authorize the spending in anticipation that the grant. The timing was February. It would have been the second meeting, I think, in February. Anyway, that needs to happen if it needs to happen that the town board authorizes it if that did not happen after our February meeting. Anything else? I see we're getting past our meeting time, so I want to just make sure that we cover the most important stuff here. Any update on Leonardo, Ray?
I have a meeting with INHS and Giselle and myself on the 26th. So that I'm trying to, get her partnered up with potential developers to work with. She is working on trying to secure the total property because she is half owner with the estate, and that is in court right now. So she doesn't have clear title to the entirety. I'm not even sure if she has clear title to her half because it's right in the middle of the court right now. So, I've asked her to bring more clarity to that meeting on the 26th. As soon as I have clarity on what she owns, I will put an easement in front of her. What I have is draft easements from, that Bob generated years ago. I don't know if they're still the current template. So if there is something better to be using, just forward that on to me.
I don't,
That's fantastic.
I don't have awareness of how many different times our template had changed over time, or if it hadn't changed.
Mhm.
I don't, Bob really was handling literally 100% of all the easement kinds of details.
Okay. Well, I'm sure she's going to have some, oh, Alice, you're muted.
My sense is that one that you might have that he tailored them for every single property when requested to do so, and I think probably the one that you have is the best. I don't think there would be an updated version necessarily template.
Okay. And I'm sure, given that she's an attorney, I'm sure she'll have some changes to make. So we'll get her desires, give it to Nate, and you know, start an iterative process there.
Yeah.
But the important thing is, you know, as I say, nobody may have clear title on it right now.
Okay, yeah, good to know. That tells us a little bit about the time frame. But Ray, thank you so
Mhm.
much for following up on this. And it's
Mhm.
the progress is that we're in contact with this family and they're positive about working with us. So
Exactly.
that's really terrific.
And so in helping her along the Partnering for Development path, it's an opportunity for me to continually speak to the attributes of the rail trail there and the fact that, you know, that's going to help the development. And it just adds to the value of our property. So that's the constant messaging. And so this, you know, what was interesting is when they were dividing the property between the estate and her, uh, the surveyors didn't even acknowledge the town's utility easement, nor acknowledge the historic railroad there. It was pretty amazing, given that Malin Perkins was involved uh, in that process, that, you know, they weren't carrying through on representing all easements. So that's at least back on the maps that are before the court.
That's important. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Um, I wanted to just mention that, well, just moving on and seeing that we're past our time, we had a request to help with a planting that the village wants to do along the trail, past where Elm Street passes, in the village of Dryden. It's 2 oak trees that they want to plant. I think this came in from Dave Cutter, who you might remember led our design workshop back in 2016 or something. And I think he just wanted to let us know in case any DRT task force members wanted to be engaged. I'm going to bring this to the full task force, but any thoughts on this? Okay. Let's see, we've got a bunch of items to talk about with the whole group. But these aren't ones that we necessarily need to talk about here. I'll say quickly, the task force membership issue. We are now at our full complement, according to the amended resolution, which capped the task force at 11 people. I had hoped that we would not have a cap, that, you know, like it would be 11 or more. But I didn't think that there was necessary to go back and amend that resolution, which expanded us from 9 until 11. So now we have Chip McAlpine, who's come on board and seems to be really eager to help us do work. Just flagging that if we wanted to add still more members, at the moment, I think that we need to request an amendment to our resolution. I think it's been helpful to have an expanded task force. It's more work to coordinate all the committees, but and just any thoughts on that final question?
You want more appointed members of this committee? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think the intention was to expand it without a cap, because we can use all the help we can get to get this done. But when the resolution actually went through, it was a cap. There is a cap of 11. It's possible that somebody will leave and 11 will be fine. We're not really ready to recommend Chips. I always recommend that people come to a few meetings before to get to know them a little bit before we decide whether to invite somebody to actually be on the task force. But I'll just convey, and other people may have observed this, that Chip has really kind of shown that he's dedicated to this work. He's been out on the trail. He's been taking photographs, giving us info. It's nice to have some new, really engaged energy. So it's not a big deal, just flagging it for the future.
Yeah, we don't have any committee that has more than, I think, 6 or 7 with alternates. So that's one concern. And then every committee member gets an email address, and then we have to pay the monthly fee for that. So
Oh,
Is there any, I mean,
I don't have an email address from the town. You can save some money on that one. I already have enough emails.
okay.
but
Well,
he's
fair
still
point.
invited to help. I mean, there's nothing that restricts Chip from participating and being an active member.
I thought that was what the Friends were for.
Yeah.
yeah, and also the Stewards Project. He can really work with us through there.
And if we find that there are members on the task force that aren't really, okay, so to back up a little bit, one of the goals of having more task force members is to have each task force member sort of chair a committee or take responsibility for some aspect of managing the project. And so if we find that there are some task force members that aren't doing that, could we invite them to reconsider whether they're still interested in being on the task force to make room for somebody that's more wants to take on a committee chip?
Yeah, I did have a meeting with the one task force member who hasn't taken very much responsibility, and invited him to step up. And the only response was, "I'll be involved with the stewards group." So, and that hasn't, well, I'm not sure that's really materialized. So I could have another conversation with him. Chris, has Steve, it seems like he even missed one of the meetings that you called for the stewards.
Yeah, that's accurate. We have not done anything further with any more get-togethers yet. So, that may have been a one-off miss.
But you and Tony are heading that up, so that does not really end up fulfilling what Diane said, which is right, that we want everybody to be working on something in a real leadership role. So it sounds like I should have that conversation and just see if Steve wants to try to take some additional leadership or step aside so somebody else can. Is that the gist I'm hearing from folks?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you once again, everybody, for sticking around. I'll try to turn this into some brief notes, and we'll bring these issues to the task force on Monday night.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Feel better.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Alice, hope you feel better.
Better.
Thank you.
Mhm.